that aren't the greatest. And there's nothing worse, making a speech when nobody can hear you. This is beautiful and it's a great place. And Memphis has to like me because I have a lot of friends here and they were not happy a year ago, 2 years ago, 4 years ago, and now they said, we can't believe what's happened in terms of crime, in terms of what's gone on and the job that these people and some of the great people, many of the great people in the audience have done. And that's why I'm here today. In fact, we were going to cancel because we have a couple of events going on, as you probably noticed. So they said, oh, we'll cancel Memphis weekend. I said, we're not canceling Memphis for anything. We're not canceling. We're not going to cancel Memphis, but we do have some big things happening. And very positive, I have to say. So before getting to our important discussion this morning, let me provide a brief update on Operation Epic Fury, which is a very good name, as it turns out. That was a name. They showed me 20 names, sir. What name would you like? I didn't like any of them. And then I get toward the end, I said, you got to be kidding. What? Operation Epic Fury. I love that name. And it's very appropriate for what's taken place, if you know, in Iran, because we knocked out their Navy. We knocked out their Air Force. We knocked out their anti-aircraft. We knocked out everything. And we did it with fury, actually. As I announced earlier, based on preliminary conversations between the United States and Iran over the past 2 days, I've directed the Department of War to temporarily postpone planned strikes against major energy and electricity targets in Iran. They have very, very big, new, actually, and very expensive, billions of dollars it costs to build them one missile, one of our powerful ones, and it comes down to the ground like it was made out of dust. But to determine whether a broader agreement can be reached, we've had very good discussions, very, very good discussions, and you have to understand, I know my whole life has been a negotiation, but with Iran, we've been negotiating for a long time, and this time they mean business. And it's only because of the great job that our military did is the reason they mean business. They want to settle, and we're going to get it done, I hope. So, hopefully this will be possible, but no matter what, we'll ensure that Iran never obtains a nuclear weapon. They can't have a nuclear weapon. They would have had one if we allowed the Obama deal to stand. That was the Iran nuclear deal they called, and they would have had one. Marcia 3. Well, I'll tell you what, Martha, we would have nuclear weapons up there when, would you say, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we would have been in a position that nobody wants to be in. We won't allow ourselves to be in that position. Over the past 3 weeks, the United States military and our partners have been decimating Iran's military capabilities with overwhelming firepower, skill, lethality, and force, and we're destroying their ballistic missiles and drones programs with launchers down by more than 90%. We're hitting their launchers at a level that nobody even thought of before. 90%. They can't launch them, and they don't have very many of them, because most of them have been annihilated. But we've annihilated their defense industrial base, eliminating their Navy. We had 158 ships are down. I said to my people, why didn't you capture the ship? I said, were they good or not? They said, they were great, sir. So why didn't you capture? We could have used them. They said, it's more fun to put them at the bottom of the sea. But they're not there anymore. So we eliminated their Navy, Pete, right? And that's gone. We eliminated their Air Force. We eliminated all of their air defense, everything. We eliminated everything there is to eliminate, and we eliminated them. We eliminated their leaders. We had the first set of leaders. They're gone. Then they met, 88 people met. And it's sad. I mean, it's sad they couldn't have made a deal. We could have made a deal with them a long time ago. Then the second set, 88 people met to pick a new leader. And they're now extinguished. And then they're meeting again, but now nobody wants to be the leader. It's one of the few political jobs that nobody wants anywhere in the world. Nobody wants it. It's a very dangerous job. My job is dangerous too, but their job is worse. In other words, we're systematically dismantling the regime's ability to threaten America. They're not threatening us anymore. As Commander-in-Chief, it's my sacred responsibility to protect our country from all threats. For decades, Iran refused every opportunity to renounce its nuclear ambitions, and in recent months, its own negotiators bragged to our representatives about having enough material to make nuclear weapons. And that was supposed to deter me, but it didn't deter. It made me more anxious, and it just made it much more important. This mission that we're all on together was much more important, and we did it quicker. Iran's missile capabilities were also growing so fast that it would soon have become virtually impossible to stop them. Once they have a missile, once they have what they were building was incredible. And you got a little glimpse of it by the fact that when they came out, they started shooting all of their neighbors. Their neighbors weren't fighting with them. They were getting along okay with their neighbors. And I was surprised. They were surprised. Everybody was surprised. And it actually worked in reverse because their neighbors then turned against them. Now Iran has one more opportunity to end its threats to America and our allies, and we hope they take it. Either way, America and the entire world will soon be much safer and will be a much more secure planet. In addition to all of this, we're working on so many different things. You know, our economy was fantastic. We had a Dow at 50,000. They say it couldn't happen in 4 years. It wouldn't happen during my term. But if I got anywhere close, it would be a great success. Well, in my first year, we hit 50,000. And with the S&P, they said, even more difficult. They said it would be impossible to hit 7,000 on the S&P. And we hit that in our first term. And then, unfortunately, I called Pete, I called General Kane, I called a lot of our great people. We have great people. And I said, let's talk. We got a problem in the Middle East. We have a country known as Iran that for 47 years has been just a purveyor of terror, and they're very close to having a nuclear weapon. We can keep going and get that 50,000 up to 55 and 60 is no end, or we can take a stop and make a little journey into the Middle East and eliminate a big problem. And Pete, I think you were the first one to speak up. And you said, let's do it, because you can't let them have a nuclear weapon. So we are now having really good discussions. They started last night, a little bit the night before that. And I think they're very good. They want peace. They've agreed they will not have a nuclear weapon, et cetera, et cetera. But we'll see. You have to get it done. But I would say there's a very good chance. And it began when I said that we were planning tomorrow on shooting down some of their power plants, and we're going to hold that up. Hopefully we won't have to do it. And hopefully we can make a deal that's good for all of us, including the Middle Eastern allies that have been very good to us, including Israel that's been a great partner in this fight. They've really been a good partner in the fight. They fought hard. But we'll see what happens. I think there's a very good chance we're going to end up in a deal. And so we're giving it 5 days, and then we're going to see where that takes us. And I would say at the end of this period, I think it could very well end up being a very good deal for everybody. As good as if we went all the way and just literally annihilated the place, which if we don't have to do that, that would be a good thing, not a bad thing. In addition, after the appalling lines and massive disruptions at major airports nationwide last weekend, I begin demanding that Democrats in Congress immediately end their disgraceful shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security and restore the full funding for airport security and the TSA. They are holding it up because they want to take care of illegal immigrants coming into our country. They want to take care of criminals that are in sanctuary cities. They want to take care of transgender for everybody, literally the mutilization of our children, men in women's sports. But what they don't want to do is give us anything to do with citizenship for voting or voter ID. Can you imagine? We're the only country that doesn't do voter ID. Every country does voter ID. Brought to my attention today that we're the only country that does mail-in voting. Mail-in voting means mail-in cheating. I call it mail-in cheating. And we got to do something about it all. And it's part of Homeland Security. And I'm suggesting strongly to the Republican Party, don't make any deal on anything. The most important thing we can have is what's called the Save America Act. Don't make any deal on anything unless you include voter ID, and you have to be a citizen to vote. You have to show citizenship to vote. Very easy to do. It's very insulting when they say people can't do it because they don't know how to do it. Anybody that can't do it, I think it's a very insulting thing to say. The Democrats are fully to blame with the struggle the great American public is going through at the airports. They're going through a big struggle right now, and we just put ICE in charge, and they're helping TSA, the agents, and they're working together so far very well. I actually suggested that in the airports they take off their masks, and they did that. In the airports, I'm a big believer in the mask because we have, Biden allowed hundreds of thousands of killers into our country. We're rapidly getting them out, by the way. But they would go after these people if they knew exactly who they were. But in the airports, it's different. I didn't love the look in the airport as you get off the plane. So I made a request and they agreed to it. So they're not going to be doing that. We will also bring out, if we don't have enough, we will bring out the National Guard and where we need it to help out at the airports. But we're not going to let this happen. It's extortion by the Democrats. They're holding up money that's already been approved, and now they're willing to go $5 billion reduction in ICE in order to get the approval on a deal that they approved, the great big beautiful deal, which is the biggest tax cut in history, the biggest regulation cut in history. They want to basically renegotiate a deal that they already approved, and they're doing it largely for a criminal element. So also the Democrats are putting our country at great risk during this period of time, a period that they call a war. They call it a war. We call it a military operation. Their leaders during this time are, as you want to say, they're in a never-never land. Schumer is gone. I mean, he's a Palestinian. He should be fighting on the side of Palestine. He's actually become a Palestinian leader. I don't know. I've never seen a man change so much. He used to be pro-Israel. Now he's pro-Palestine. I've never seen anything like it. And, he's worried he's going to lose his next election, which it only depends if anybody runs against him. If anybody runs against him, he'll lose. But he's gone very wacky and very dangerous for our country. But we want all of those things. We have to have them. We want voter ID. We want proof of citizenship as part of our funding. We want to merge them so that we get the great, big, beautiful bill in action, and we can get the America and Save America. They called it the Save Act, but nobody knew what the Save Act was. So I said, you have to call it, under any circumstances, you have to call it the Save America Act, because everybody knows what that is. So they want funding taken away from the ICE patriots who are responsible for getting rid of the criminals that Sleepy Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of our country, and his gang of thugs in the White House. You talk about weaponization. They weaponize everybody. When when Pam looks at somebody, oh, it's weaponization. They've indicted me. What they've done to me and everybody else, it's a disgrace. They're the weaponizers, and what they've done to people, we can never let that happen again. We can never let them get away with it again.
Amen.
They are the greatest weaponizers. Fortunately, it didn't work because here I am with you. So it didn't work out too well. But they want to have people come into our country. And so many of these people are murderers. They're drug dealers. They're the worst criminals anywhere in the world. They want them in our country. They don't want them to come out. They make it almost impossible, but we get them out anyway. They should have never been allowed to enter our sacred ground. These people should have never, they came from all over the world. They came from all over. They came from the Congo in Africa. They came from all over South America, Asia, everywhere. and they were from jails and mental institutions. They were drug dealers. They were murderers. 11,888 murders. In any event, the Democrats are being blamed by the American people for the catastrophe going on right now in our airports and at other points of transportation and beyond. And we want the public to know we're not going to let them out of this trap that they created for themselves. And I'm suggesting very strongly that the Republicans, in going for the Save America Act, that you weld it into exactly this, because voter ID is part of Homeland Security. Think of it. We're talking about two separate items, but they're really the same. Voter ID is part of Homeland Security. And citizenship, proof of citizenship, is part of Homeland Security. So I think it should be welded in. I think it should be together. You should vote together, because the public has not liked what they've done at the airports, and they've done it, and the public understands it.
Amen.
Wise to Republicans do
Shame on the Democrats.
With Democrats and let them out of this hole that they've buried themselves in. You have to take the votes in the Senate to approve. You need votes to approve. We have to get Democrat votes, and it's certain
Democratic leadership is a problem.
The filibuster. It would be great. It would be great. Get rid of the filibuster and get it all done. So we'll get it done. We want another thing. We can, or we don't have to, add those other items. And by the way, they say they're 80-20 items. They're not 80-20. They're 99-1. Men playing in women's sports is a 99-1. You look at transgender mutilization of our children, that's a 99-1. And we have that in the bill, too. So they won't sign it and let the people reject them. And what we have to do is we have to win the midterms. This is the most important election, because all of the gains that we've made, we built the greatest economy, the greatest military. I built the military in my first term, and we built the greatest military in the world. We're showing it now with Venezuela, with Iran. Everybody knows we have the greatest, most powerful military in the world.
Amen.
And we're in a position that we haven't seen. We're respected. You know, our country now is respected all over the world. A year and a half ago, we were a laughing stock. We were a laughing stock. The King of Saudi Arabia told me a year and a half ago, he said, "President, I can't believe what's happened to America. 1 year ago, you were a laughing stock. Nobody thought you could ever survive. Now you're the hottest country." He used that expression. He said, "Now you're the hottest country anywhere in the world." And we are now. Congratulations, because we're all partners in this deal. You're the hottest country anywhere in the world. It's really amazing. So I congratulate you. It's a great feeling, because we were laughed at for 4 years with this guy that should have never been president. So I'm tying Homeland Security into voter identification with picture and proof of citizenship in order to vote. And those two items are the most important thing having to do with Homeland Security. So it should be part of the Homeland Security bill. And I'm requesting that the Republican senators do that immediately. You don't have to take a fast vote. Don't worry about Easter going home. In fact, make this one for Jesus, okay? Make this one for Jesus. That's what I tell them.
Amen.
It would be a damn good thing.
Amen.
The most important part of Homeland Security is
make this one for Jesus.
Citizenship. Nobody can vote on Homeland Security without voter ID or proof of citizenship. And you can't have Homeland Security without voter ID or proof of citizenship. So we're tying them together. So now, if you don't mind, let's get to the reason why I'm in Memphis and why you're doing so well. Because Fred Smith, everybody know Fred Smith? He was a friend of mine. And he created, from a sort of failed report at like Harvard or whatever, he did a business report, a concept he had, that was his thesis, a concept he had to build a company, and it was FedEx. So he gave this thing where he takes packages, he delivers them, who the heck knows what he put down. Bottom line is they gave him a lousy mark. I don't know if they passed him or not, but they didn't give him a good mark. They said, "This is the most ridiculous business plan we've ever seen. Fred, go back to the drawing board and try something else, because this won't work." Well, he decided to go for it and he built FedEx, and it's an amazing story. And he was a very good friend of mine, but he would tell me that he didn't know what to do about Memphis. It was so dangerous that they would have a board meeting, and the board members, they would demand it, that they could not walk 1 block to their hotel. You know the hotel I'm talking about. It was so dangerous. And now they tell me this is like an entirely different place. It's like Washington, D.C. In Washington, D.C., we had the same thing. And now it's such an honor to. If only more governors, your governor called and he said, we love it. Your mayor has been terrific. Your mayor has been terrific. But look at the results that you've got. Look at the results. And everybody should do it. You know, if I was Chicago, Pritzker, he's a failed governor. All he has to do is say, President, we're having a problem in Chicago. Could you come in and fix it? We'd have it fixed in 2 months. It would be good. It would be good in 2 months. It would be great in 4 months. You'd have almost no crime. But he can't do it. And it just keeps going the same way. So that's the reason I'm here, to tell you how well you've done, how well we've done. I mean, I just came in and people greeted me, sir, thank you very much for what you've done. I said, oh, where are you from? Memphis. What did I do? You stopped crime. And your sheriffs are so thankful. And, oh, you haven't seen it yet. You know, we've just been here a short while. In another 2 or 3 months, you'd have, like, no crime. And, you know, we take these criminals. Is that our handsome senator down there, Bill? Is that our handsome senator, Bill? You got both of them now, but you could have a new governor here soon, I guess, huh? You'd have a very new governor. Would you two stand up as senators? Please stand up. Two of the greatest people. Two of the greatest people. They never let me down, you know? Some let me down. They never let me down. Thank you.
All right, you've been listening to President Trump speaking live from Memphis, Tennessee. He's been addressing and meeting with the Memphis Safety Task Force. He is there to tout the successes of that, bringing crime in Memphis down 45%, but making a lot of news in the meantime, John. Hello and welcome, everybody. I'm Sandra Smith in New York. John, good to be with you today.
Good to be with you as well, Sandra. You're all warmed up and ready to go. I'm John Roberts here in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, on Iran, he is talking about giving Iran 5 days now. He says there's a very good chance of a deal with Iran. He led off with Iran, meeting with the task force there. We're now having really good discussions, said President Trump. This discussions, he said, started Saturday night, vowing the world will be much safer soon, John. So a lot of news to get to on Iran coming from Memphis just moments ago.
Yeah, even though Iran is denying that there are any talks taking place, there were some reports that the Iranian Parliament Speaker Ghalibaf was meeting, or at least leading up the delegation. He has, since those reports came out, denied that any of that is taking place, but the president insists it's ongoing. So
he insists they want to settle, and this time they mean business, so we'll see. All right, we'll have more on that in just a moment. We are waiting a major update on that deadly plane crash. Meanwhile, in LaGuardia, at LaGuardia Airport, it happened last night between an Air Canada jet and a fire truck attempting to cross the runway. The 2 pilots are confirmed dead, and more than 40 passengers were injured.
Here's what we know at this hour. According to the Port Authority, the fire truck was responding to an odor on a United Airlines plane on a different runway that was apparently making flight attendants feel ill. The National Transportation Safety Board now investigating and will brief the media today.
We hope for an update on all of that shortly. The New York Post, meanwhile, with this reporting about the violent collision. Responding officers found a flight attendant that had been ejected from the plane, still strapped to her jump seat. Incredibly tragic. CB Cotton live at LaGuardia Airport with an update here in New York City. Hi, CB.
Hey, Sandra. Well, in less than an hour, we could learn whether flights will begin taking off again from here at LaGuardia Airport. Sandra, it'll be up to NTSB investigators who've been on scene since early this morning, trying to learn more about why this happened. New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani met with Port Authority leaders moments ago, and Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy is arriving soon. The FAA tells Fox last night's staffing here at LaGuardia will be part of the investigation. Meanwhile, here's what President Trump is saying about this deadly crash.
Terrible. They made a mistake. It's a dangerous business. That's terrible.
The damaged Air Canada plane is still crushed on the runway. Its nose sheared off from the collision with the Port Authority fire truck that was responding to another issue last night. In audio from moments before the crash, you can hear what appears to be an air traffic controller giving clearance to the fire truck to cross the tarmac before that air traffic controller frantically tells the truck to stop. Moments later, you hear this.
That was a kid to watch. Yeah, I know him too. I tried to reach out to my stuff, and we were dealing with an emergency earlier. No, man, you did the best you could.
2 pilots were killed in the crash. Shortly before midnight, cables and debris were left hanging from a mangled cockpit, and just feet away, the damaged fire truck lying on its side. Canadian investigators were sent here to New York to work closely with the NTSB on this investigation. Again, officials say 41 people were sent to the hospital. Some of them have since been released, but we're told others have injuries that are much more serious. Sandra.
CB Cotton with that update for us live from LaGuardia Airport. We will check back in soon, CB. Thank you.
You said there's many points of agreement with Iran right now.
Many.
What can you give us a
Many, like 15 points. 15 points.
Iran has said yes.
Well, they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. That's number one. That's number 1, 2, and 3. They will never have a nuclear weapon.
Said yes to that?
They've agreed to that.
President Trump speaking this morning after announcing a 5-day pause on strikes on Iranian energy infrastructure after saying there was significant progress in talks between the United States and Iran. Our chief foreign correspondent Trey Yanks reporting live in Tel Aviv. So the president is saying that these talks took place. Iran is saying no, they didn't. So where do we stand, Trey?
Yeah, John, good afternoon. For the first time in more than 3 weeks, there is talk of diplomacy across the Middle East once again. President Trump taking to Truth Social to say, in part, quote, based on the tenor and tone of these in-depth, detailed, and constructive conversations, which will continue throughout the week, he's ordered the Department of War to not target Iran's energy infrastructure for at least 5 days. I'm told Israeli officials have also gotten that message from the White House as all of this is taking place. We do understand there are more strikes against the Iranian regime, but right now the U.S. and Israeli jets over the country are avoiding the power plant that President Trump threatened over the weekend. President Trump on his way to Memphis said this on the tarmac.
We have had very, very strong talks. We'll see where they lead. We have major points of agreement. I would say almost all points of agreement. Perhaps that hasn't been conveyed. So the discussions took place yesterday. They went into yesterday evening. They want very much to make a deal. We'd like to make a deal too.
Amid this talk of diplomacy, those strikes are continuing. You can see some video here released by the Iran Red Crescent of a civilian trapped under the rubble. According to local media reports, more than 1,500 Iranians have been killed since Operation Epic Fury began. Hundreds of them we know are civilians. One resident responding at a scene to her relative being trapped under the rubble.
He is alive in there. Why are you acting so late? Do you want to hand him over to me dead tomorrow and say he died? They called him this morning and he said yes, yes, yes. I am pleading with all of you. I am telling you he is in there.
John, I've been talking with regional sources, trying to get an understanding of where things stand at the negotiating table. The Israelis are looking at his comments closely. They're watching not only the president's remarks in Memphis, but also what he said earlier today. And there's a real understanding here that the president could be giving the Iranians an opportunity to once again come back for talks and try to make some concessions before entering into the next phase of this conflict. Of course, the Americans also want to understand who exactly is in charge of Iran amid these strikes that are continuing against the Islamic Republic. John?
I would assume it's not the moderates who are firing these missiles, it's the IRGC, so we don't know if they're on board with these talks, such as it is. Trey Yanks with the update for us from Tel Aviv. Trey, thank you. Sandra?
Let's bring in now James Carafano, a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel and Heritage Foundation Senior Counselor. Welcome to you, sir. You just heard the president moments ago, a lot of news on Iran. He vowed the world will be much safer soon, that discussions are happening. They began over the weekend. Do you take Iran at their word if you're President Trump?
So the question is, what Iran, right? So there's some reporting that who they've actually been talking to is senior members of the Iranian parliament, which might be fine. So we have no idea, from what we publicly know, how widely the
Proof but
leadership
verify.
is shared. It's pretty degraded. Also, you can't trust anything the Iranians said publicly. We don't even know who controls these various different medias now, and the messages they may be seeing publicly may or may not completely conflict with anything in private. So it is difficult to make sense out of all this. It does make sense for the U.S. to say, hey, let's wind this down. Look, from America's perspective, dude, we have already won. We've wiped out the nuclear program, and eventually we'll find out where the uranium is. We've crippled the ballistic program and the production. They have lost control of their surrogates, and their surrogates have been greatly degraded. So all the things that make Iran truly a significant threat in the region have been significantly degraded, and they're not coming back, not just for the rest of Trump's presidency, but for the rest of the next two presidencies. So from a U.S. perspective, to wind things down now would be fine. The Iranians can't win here. I mean, they can't play the close the Hormuz Strait forever, because eventually they'll open that. They can't keep the close. And they can't play, we'll blow up your infrastructure, you'll blow up ours, because they'll lose that, because the Saudis, UAE, Bahrain, they can repair theirs. Nobody's going to fix the Iranian oil infrastructure if it gets destroyed. And that is absolutely going to flatline their economy forever. So they don't really have a path forward, except this one thing. The only thing that the IRGC and the hardliners want is they want to remain in control of their government, and that's all they really care about. They can probably achieve that for now, but we can continue to mow the grass here. We can continue to. That's not saying this government can survive, say, 6 months or so. So, from the U.S. perspective, winding things down now would be fine.
To your point and your initial question, what Iran are we dealing with? As you mentioned, President Trump did address that a few minutes ago, and when he gaggled earlier, he said these are reasonable people he's dealing with. Listen,
yeah, well,
we'll play it out just a second.
Yeah.
Now, in all fairness, everybody's been killed from the regime. They're really starting off. There's automatically a regime change, but we're dealing with some people that I find to be very reasonable, very solid. The people within know who they are. They're very respected. And maybe one of them will be exactly what we're looking for.
So, James, from our perspective, I mean, as we all listen to this together, it seems the president is indicating that this time is different.
Right. Well, even if the people that he's talking to don't control the security infrastructure of the country, if he cuts a deal with them and they publicly cut a deal with him, even if they're not in control, the amount of pressure that's going to put on the IRGC and their hardliners is even going to be worse. So the problem is all they want to do is keep control. But if their notion of keeping control is we have to keep fighting, every day they do that, it actually puts them more at risk that people will desert them and it'll collapse.
Okay, we are watching it all in real time. I mean, that was another update from President Trump just a few moments ago from Memphis. It seems like he's going to keep us posted as these discussions continue. James, great to have you on. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Here I am on the path on the lakefront at 6 a.m. on a Monday. And we got a lot of people running, having a great time. It doesn't feel like a hellhole here.
That was Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker last summer brushing off safety concerns around the Chicago lakefront. Now a college student is dead, killed on that same lakefront, allegedly at the hands of an illegal immigrant. Jonathan Fahey on how Chicago's sanctuary policy has played a role in her death.
Plus, the Democrat-led shutdown of DHS causing chaos at airports across the country.
I want to thank ICE because they stepped in so strongly. They'll do great. And if that's not enough, I'll bring in the National Guard. We're not going to have the Democrats destroy our country.
Amen.
This March at Renewal by
A very serious form of a regime change.
Not sure what that tells you, David.
Well, and we're not sure who he's talking to in Iran either. I mean, that's a big point. General Keane was on earlier this morning with Stuart Varney, suggesting that he thinks he knows who they're talking to and that they're not quite as as accommodating as the president is indicating. So that's putting some pause in the markets too. Who it is that they're talking to, whether or not they have control. So many of the leaders have been killed by airstrikes that it's difficult to tell. But what is not difficult to tell is the world is producing more oil than the world is using right now. The world uses about 105 million barrels a day, and we're producing about 107 million barrels a day. So we're producing more. That's why when you hear the phrase, we're awash in oil, it's not just hyperbole, it's true. We produce more oil than we're using. The problem is getting that 20% of what is produced every year through the Strait of Hormuz, and you gotta knock that out. All of the defense forces and the offensive forces of Iran, you gotta knock those out and make sure before these vessels feel good about taking the strait into open waters. Now remember, Iran is still sending its oil out on these tankers, so Iran is getting their boats out. We know that it's possible to do it. It's not like the whole thing is blockaded. There is a passageway. The problem is a lot of the 100 or so tankers that are waiting in the wings to go through are afraid that they are going to be attacked by these drone attacks, and that's what has to be nailed down.
Gotcha. All right, David, thank you very much. What a day for the markets.
Yeah, indeed.
Thank you, sir. All right, John, some breaking news.
Yeah, some breaking news on that deadly plane crash at LaGuardia Airport late last night. We have got new video of the horrifying collision between that Air Canada flight and a Port Authority fire truck. Let's go to CB Cotton. She's covering the story for us from LaGuardia. Hi, CB.
Hey, John, yeah, we're getting our first look at the moment of impact between that Air Canada plane and a Port Authority fire truck. Take a look at this disturbing video. You can see the truck making its way down one of the runways. Its emergency lights are flashing. You have to look very closely. You see that truck moving straight as it begins to turn. The Air Canada plane slams into the truck, and the truck appears to flip several times. That's when the plane looks like it loses control. And we know from scene photos that the nose of the plane was completely torn off. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, which operates the airport, said the Air Canada flight was coming in from Montreal just before midnight last night when this collision happened. We know the fire truck was responding to a separate issue on that runway, and that's when this crash took place. 2 pilots sadly were killed, dozens of others were injured. Miraculously, the 2 officers in the fire truck are expected to be okay, but again, this new video coming into our newsroom showing that moment of impact, just horrific to look at. This new video we're seeing for the first time also comes as people are starting to arrive here to LaGuardia Airport. We're waiting to see whether the airport will open back up as we were expecting at 2 p.m. local time and whether flights pick back up. We're also waiting to hear more from Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, who should be here on the ground at some point this afternoon. John, back over to you.
All right, CB Cotton, very dramatic, unbelievable, and tragic video. Thank you, CB. Sandra, I think people are taking off. Well, when last we saw that aircraft, there it is. There's the live shot. That aircraft is just off one of the main runways there. So people will be taxiing past it, taking off and landing past it. I mean, that
is a horrific
gruesome scene to be traveling past.
Yeah, and seeing that video, John, you just think about, all that was happening, with those who were tasked to not have this happen. I messed up from one of the air traffic controllers, obviously human error involved in this, but you see that fire truck and you just think, gosh, can we get to a place where there's less room for human error and perhaps more advanced technology that could prevent this from happening ever again?
It reminds me very much, though, thankfully not as tragic as what happened last year here in Washington, D.C., where that helicopter crashed into a very similar jet and killed everybody on board on both aircraft. Thankfully, the loss of life here was kept to a minimum, but it could have been so much worse. If that plane had exploded into flames, I mean, God forbid what could have happened.
It's a tragic sight, and we know that investigation is ongoing. We will continue to bring everybody news from there as the airport begins to open back up, with this still the scene there at LaGuardia. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
The restaurant that she went to was called the Croissanterie. And here is their statement about all of this. Allowing her to stay risk being perceived as a lack of support for the community that makes up the majority of our team, as well as their families and friends. Conversely, asking her to leave would be viewed as denying service based on differing beliefs. We regret being placed in this position and having to make a difficult decision. However, we stand by our choice to support our employees and guests. We should point out that she had already finished and she paid and tipped, so they didn't ask her to leave until they got her money. Restaurants are private businesses. They can do what they want, but doing what you want, I mean within limits, but doing what you want on occasion comes with consequences.
That's right. I don't know what is more chilling, the rage or the rationalization of the rage. I mean, this effort to say, well, this was really the right thing to do. Well, what they did is they're basically serving hate. They're catering to hate. They're telling their customers, yes, you shouldn't have to sit and eat with people you disagree with politically. That's what this restaurant is saying. And there's a lot of people, thankfully, that will find that far from appetizing.
Yeah, I mean, somebody standing with her, with the staff apparently started yelling at her to leave when she was already on the way out and flipped her off as well. So, not a lot of courage involved to do that when somebody's leaving. Say, get out, you know. I don't know. What happened to civility, Professor?
Thank you, John. I agree.
All right. Appreciate it. Good to talk to you today. Sandra?
All right, John, LaGuardia Airport expected to reopen moments from now as we await an update from the NTSB on the tragic Air Canada plane crash killing 2 pilots. As soon as that is underway, we're going to take you there live.
People. And next hour, we're expecting a news conference with Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy. And ICE agents at America's airports, but it's not clear what they're doing to help passengers facing wait times of over 3 hours in some places.
And 50 years after he co-founded Apple with Steve Jobs and designed the company's first computer, Steve Wozniak joins us on what he sees for the next 50. We're following these major developing stories and many more, all coming in right here to CNN News Center.
The FAA says that New York's LaGuardia Airport is planning to reopen a single runway here any moment. The airport has remained closed since late last night when an Air Canada plane collided with a fire truck while landing. Video from the scene shows the nose of the plane, you see it there, and the cockpit heavily damaged. The pilot and the co-pilot were killed. Dozens aboard were injured.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy and other officials are expected to hold a briefing from LaGuardia next hour. Here is air traffic control audio from just before the deadly collision.
Truck 1 and Company, LaGuardia Tower, crossing across 4 at Delta. Truck 1 and Company, across 4 at Delta. Truck 1 and Company, 4 at Delta. Frontier 4195, just stop there, please. Stop, stop. Stop, Truck 1, stop. Stop, Truck 1, stop.
We're also hearing audio between the controller and a Frontier Airlines pilot who witnessed the incident.
That was a good to watch. Yeah, I know, too. I tried to reach out to my stuff. We were dealing with an emergency earlier. No, man, you did the best you could.
CNN's Shimon Prokupecz is near the scene at LaGuardia. Shimon, what is the latest you're learning?
Yeah, Bar, so we moved inside for this hour. We're behind here, the podium, in front of the podium. Behind me is where the Secretary, Sean Duffy, and other officials we expect to hear from New York City Mayor as well, and other government officials who will be here in about an hour. The airport has reopened, as you said, so we're waiting to see if any of the flights will be taking off. I could tell you people, certainly since this morning, more people have started to stream into the airport, checking in, heading towards their gates. Everyone's just waiting to see if they could take off. The plane itself, that Air Canada jet, that's still on the runway. That's on runway 4. The fire truck, that crash truck, that is still there as well. And it could be some time before officials move everything. Of course, all of this is happening as the NTSB is now here on the ground. They are going over the evidence. There is surveillance video that they now have in their hands. They also have that audio that you just played, the traffic control, which is going to be a key part of this investigation. Questions as to why it seems both the Air Canada jet as well as that fire truck, why they were both cleared to come in, and that fire truck coming across the runway and then being hit by this jet that was going over 100 miles an hour. We have some new sound from another passenger who was on the plane describing what it was like. Take a listen.
It was a rough landing. Like when we landed, everyone felt it. It's just like the plane like jolted, and you heard the pilot try to brake, like he was trying to prevent the collision that occurred. And as you heard the brake, you just, a couple seconds later, it was just a very loud boom, and everybody just jolted out of their seats. People hit their heads, people were bleeding.
And video that's been described to me by a source, which was captured what happened here. There was video from LaGuardia Airport. You could see the plane coming down the runway, and then it T-bones the fire truck, hitting it almost in the middle of that truck, preventing more serious injuries for those two officers that were inside. I mean, had it been any earlier, those two officers probably would have been killed as well. The two pilots that were killed, we don't have any information on them yet. We're waiting to hear more from the NTSB. So we're going to hear from a lot of officials today. We're going to have a 3 o'clock press conference here, and then later, sometime after 4 p.m., we expect to hear from the NTSB.
Such a tragedy.
All right, Shimon,
Such a
thank
tragedy.
you so much for that. Now to a cryptic new message from Iran today, a source telling the semi-official Fars news agency that the country has special plans tonight for Tel Aviv and some regional allies of the U.S. and Israel in the hopes of derailing any negotiations. And this comes just hours after President Trump announced talks had begun after his threat to strike Iran's energy facilities. Iran has denied any talks are taking place, but President Trump says there are talks and they're productive.
We are now having really good discussions. They started last night, a little bit, the night before that, and I think they're very good. They want peace. They've agreed they will not have a nuclear weapon, et cetera, et cetera. But we'll see. You have to get it done. But we were planning tomorrow on shooting down some of their power plants, and we're going to hold that up. Hopefully we won't have to do it, and hopefully we can make a deal that's good for all of us.
We're joined now by CNN military analyst, retired Air Force Colonel Cedric Leighton. And while Iran is saying that there are no talks, Trump is saying that there are, and he said there's 15 points of agreement with Iran, including that Tehran commits to not having a nuclear weapon, and also this idea of enriched uranium that the U.S. would take possession of. So talk to us about that. Where is most of that held, and what are the challenges in securing that?
Yeah, so there are a lot of challenges to that, Brianna, and where most of it is held is basically in several places here. We have Natanz, which is one of the enrichment facilities. You have Fordo, another enrichment facility, and then the rest of them, Tehran, Arak, Isfahan, those are all research facilities. So the theory is that a lot of that enriched uranium that we have is probably held in Isfahan. However, there is the good possibility that among those 970 or so pounds of enriched uranium, that they have been dispersed, that those scuba tank-sized containers of the enriched uranium have been dispersed throughout at least some of these areas and perhaps in other areas throughout Iran. So that is a very difficult problem.
And the president over the weekend had threatened that he was going to start hitting Iran's energy sites, right? And then today he says, actually, 5-day moratorium while we're having these talks. But talk to us about these big sites and what the big targets would be.
So among the big targets that we see in this particular case are the Damavan combined cycle power plant, which produces about 2,868 megawatts of power. That's the biggest plant in Iran itself. Another one is the Shahid Salimi plant, 2,215 megawatts. And then the third one would be the Shahid Rajai plant, with about a little over 2,000 megawatts. So this is basically the group of plants that produce a large proportion of Iran's power. However, there are a lot of power plants out there, and these big three are not responsible for everything. There are about 50 or so plants that are major electrical producers, and then we can't forget about this thing right here. This is the Bushehr nuclear plant, which is right in this area right here. So that would be another place that, if that were attacked, that would be a very dangerous thing for the rest of the Gulf and certainly for Iran itself.
And you can see this cycle happening if this starts to go, right? Because the IRGC has threatened that they would retaliate, specifically when it comes to Israel and also other regional countries and sites where the U.S. has a stake. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so this is what we've seen so far. So when you look at this, and this is a mix of strikes against Iran, as well as Iran strikes against Israel and the Gulf countries. So this is quite numerous. The concentration of strikes has so far been in the western part of Iran, the southern part of Iran, and of course around the capital, Tehran, right here. What would have to happen in a case like this is you would have to see a whole bunch of other strikes, potentially in this area right here around the Strait of Hormuz, because in this particular case, that is of course what is of greatest interest from an economic perspective. It's 20% of the oil flowing through this area. This is the area that would get a lot of attention if we were to restrike things. Plus you have the command and control elements in all of these areas, but the real key to all of this is not only what they can do in terms of getting commerce through, but also in terms of getting rid of the missiles, getting rid of the missile launch sites. And a lot of those are right in this particular area right here.
Cedric, thank you so much for taking us through that. We appreciate it. And still to come, as President Trump says the Strait of Hormuz will open very soon. Gas prices are now rising for a 23rd day in a row. We'll look at what has to happen to reverse that trend. And ICE agents are now inside multiple U.S. airports as TSA wait lines grow. What we're learning about the latest move by the White House. And then later, a flash flood disaster in Hawaii. Hundreds of people rescued as families are forced out of their homes, and there's more rain on the way. We'll have that and much more coming up on CNN News Central.